Hello to everyone who has dialed in and who may be listening in on today's PATA webinar. Thank you for your participation at the PATA Innovation Series webinar. My name is Santosh Kumar. I run memberships and partnerships at PATA. I would like to welcome you to the PATA Innovation Series webinar, Innovation and Next Generation Technology in Travel. Now, a very quick brief on today's session. Digital transformation in travel has been propelled by the pandemic, with travel businesses investing in safe and seamless tech in the short term for the restart, while technologies like artificial intelligence are beginning to be deployed to tackle the current challenges faced by destinations and local communities like over-tourism and visitor dispersal. Next generation game changers like 6G are still on the horizon, offering truly immersive travel experiences and new ways to solve the climate emergency. Join us in this conversation over the next hour or so. A quick couple of house rules to follow. If you would like to engage with other participants, please use the chat function. Do not submit questions to the speakers using this function. If you would like to submit any questions to the speaker, please go ahead and use the Q&A function for that. Now with that, I would like to introduce our speaker today, Caroline. Caroline, please turn on your camera. Caroline Bremner is the head of travel research at Euromonitor International. Caroline manages the global content strategy for the travel and tourism industry at Euromonitor International, which she joined in 1996. Euromonitor International is a world-leading market research company with 15 offices worldwide and also a valued partner of PATA. As a global thought leader, Caroline engages with clients, trade bodies, and research partners, working with analysts across 100 countries to drive strategic insights. She has played an integral role in creating the most extensive travel and tourism intelligence system as used by leading destinations, governments, and travel brands around the world. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Caroline. Caroline, please feel free to go ahead and share your screen and the presentation with the rest of us. Over to you.
Thank you to Santosh for that very lovely PATA welcome. So that's essentially what we'd like to do today, is to talk about innovation and next generation technology and how that is shaping the travel and tourism industry, particularly as we're still, reeling from the pandemic and beginning the restart. So for today's webinar, what I'll do is just quickly introduce Euromonitor and myself. Then we'll look at the global outlook, where we are, considering that, dark clouds gathered over Europe with the war in Ukraine. Then we'll look at how Asia Pacific is performing, moving out of the pandemic. And then we'll turn our attention really to new types of innovation in Asia, what we're seeing globally, and then wrap up with some, forward-looking and future-looking next generation technology. So just to introduce you to Euromonitor International, if you're not already familiar with us. So we are a global market research company, and we have 15 offices around the world. Essentially, that has been very, very important. While we've been, tackling the pandemic, it really has helped us to really understand what's happening globally and in terms of, each individual country. So I really value the network of analysts that we have in country. And of course, we have a very broad reach of Asia Pacific with our offices in Singapore, in Shanghai, and also in Bangalore, as well as Sydney. I'm Caroline Bremner. I'm the head of travel research at Euromonitor International. As Santosh says, I've been with the company for over 20 years and headed up travel and tourism research for at least 18 years of that. So I've really sort of lived through some of those crisis that we've seen in the industries, whether it was 9/11, the great financial crisis, or more recently with the pandemic. And now, as I mentioned, with the war in Ukraine, which is causing further uncertainty in the industry. And so at this time, it's so important that we do continue to focus on innovation as a key recovery lever for success in the future. So I'm just going to share the very latest data that we have from our travel forecast model. So this is looking at global inbound tourism. And as you can see here, that there was this very sharp contraction, pretty much falling off a cliff in 2020 with the pandemic. And even 21 really didn't sort of return or turn out to be the year that we were expecting, with very, very small growth of about 7% last year. So really 2022 is the year that everybody is hoping is going to be when that recovery in tourism accelerates. However, we do have some threats that have emerged, not just the war in Ukraine, but equally, rising oil prices, rising fuel and food and energy prices. That's really causing that stoking up of inflation, which of course then translates into higher prices and sometimes pushes consumers out of the market. When it comes to actually recovery, our baseline expectation is that we won't return to pre-crisis 2019 levels until at least 2027. So we're talking, several years of operating below capacity in the market. Of course, there are lots of different scenarios. We have Eurozone recession that could potentially happen off the back of war in Europe, which again would weigh on recovery globally. And then our COVID-19 pessimistic 2 scenario, which is where there's like further delays to, rolling out of vaccines and further, new variants which may come on the scene, which again would disrupt and slow down recovery. So that would weigh on, again, how long it's going to take. And of course, what we've seen is that tourism has very much decoupled from the global economy, just being at the forefront of the travel bans, the restrictions, and that has been very difficult, as we know, in regions such as Asia, to open up in a coordinated manner. When it comes to the overall sales of travel products, we can see that again, it's that long return to recovery. But what we've seen during the pandemic is very much the acceleration of all things digital. And so what we're seeing is that actually by this year, we expect about, 2026 onwards, we'll have about 54% of travel sales being booked online. And of course, a large percentage of the online sales is through smartphones and mobile devices. So at least a quarter is booked via mobile. So that's a very significant amount, and it's clearly one of the fastest growing areas of the industry. Equally, we could see that, even in the height of the pandemic, that travel businesses are investing and continuing to invest in new technology. So 39% of businesses that we spoke to said that they are, factoring in new technologies to help them through this very challenging period. So continuing that focus on digital, on, all these next generation technologies that we know are so important. Equally, when we look across the world, we talk to travel businesses and we ask them specifically what their key commercial areas of interest and development were for the years ahead. And so if we look at Asia Pacific, that's the columns in black, we can see that, payments and diversifying payment options is very important, enhancing cybersecurity, and of course, integrating technology, a bit less so, but I would say that's because Asia's ahead of the curve in terms of, embracing all things digital. And very interestingly, an interest in co-creating products in the travel space with consumers, so that there's that greater alignment between the consumers and the businesses. When it comes to all things technology, it's also important that we keep an eye on the sustainability agenda. And what we also asked all our travel businesses that we speak to is, how invested are you in the 17 Sustainable Development Goals? And so we can see across the world, there's a very strong emphasis on SDG 9, which is on decent work, industry, innovation and infrastructure, and SDG 8, which is on decent work and economic growth. But for Asia, we also saw that there was a very strong focus on responsible consumption and production, so with 53% there. And again, what we're seeing is sort of the importance of climate action. This came through particularly for Europe, with 60% of travel businesses saying that they engage specifically with climate action. And this is so important in the drive to net zero, preserving biodiversity, and of course that path, the 1.5 degree pathway that is clearly set out in the 2030 agenda and the 2050 pathway. So that's it on the global level. So let's turn and have a look at how Asia Pacific is performing as it attempts to move out of the pandemic. As we know, Asia Pacific, despite the economics potential coming out of the region with the growth of middle-class households, etc., we know that coming off the back of the pandemic, that opening up has been slow because of a very cautious approach. So we know that the pandemic is still very much front and center for governments and tourism boards, and it's a very cautious approach that's taking place. So that means that for inbound receipts in the gray there, that we even saw a dip last year as well. And we do expect a rebound to start taking place in 2022. So some news coming in today about Hong Kong opening up to 9 key countries. And of course, we know that some countries that are so important to all destinations around the world, like China, remain closed with their zero COVID policy. So that is also going to weigh on the speed of the recovery. So again, we're looking at several years for Asia Pacific to return to those pre-crisis levels. But when it does, of course, the long-term projections for Asia are very strong because of the fundamentals that I mentioned. When it comes to innovation in Asia, we produce, white papers. We're always keeping an eye on what's happening for case studies. And so what I'll do today is share some of that research with you. For example, here in Japan, we have innovation being used for the purpose of contactless. And of course, in the pandemic, that also means safe. So safe and seamless. So this is Print Smart in Japan. They are using very latest technology and artificial intelligence for a truly seamless and safe customer experience. So that goes across all the different stages of the customer journey, whether you're, checking in, checking out, whether you're in room and you're using, the smart mirrors or the loyalty program. Everything is, through the mobile app, and that facilitates everything that you're trying to do in the hotel. Equally, they're using AI in terms of robotics for cleaning and security. There was one area that I felt that they could even, expand their AI into, which is also doing a lot more on carbon tracking and using, artificial intelligence to really sort of focus on the net zero journey that we need to be on. So that's in Japan. Over in Thailand, We saw this also technology underpinning sort of wellness. So this is the Raksa Wellness and Medical Retreat near Bangkok. So they are using technology in terms of, making sure that they provide their customers with truly personalized itineraries and treatments. And so again, you can see that technology is not just on the operational side, it's very much on the front end and the consumer facing interactions. And so, everything is really tailored to the individual, whether it's the food, whether it's the treatments, everything being truly holistic. So I thought this was quite a using innovation in terms of, personal renewal, which is so important, health and well-being, again, coming off the back of the pandemic. This was very interesting, this again in Japan, and it really sort of illustrates how business travel is being completely transformed by the pandemic. As we are today, we know the importance of, webinars and virtual meetings, but here a Japanese company called Japanese MPO Virtual Rights, they work in the virtual world, and they actually held their annual meeting, their general AGM, basically online. They all turned up as avatars and were, participating as avatars. And again, that's quite empowering because people, in terms of gender, in terms of age and ability, it empowers everybody to be, nobody's real identity is known and everybody is equal in this virtual world. So it's quite empowering in terms of improving equality and diversity and inclusion. So this could be the face of business travel as we go forward. Again, there's a lot of emphasis on, urban mobility, smart cities. So here in Singapore, we have a new electric startup creating these sort of 8-seater electric taxis. It's also going to be rolled out in ASEAN as well as Africa and South America. We can see that 20% of businesses that we spoke to are planning or already investing in electric vehicles. But it's not just the fleet of electric vehicles, it's also the infrastructure and the charging stations. So again, it's a very holistic solution that's required for urban transportation. And of course, with the 1.5 degree pathway, this is another key way to reduce carbon emissions and ultimately to become net carbon zero. And of course, it solves that last mile problem for consumers, allowing them to connect to key hub areas within the transport network. This was a really interesting example, again in Japan, and it's creating a very multi-sensory, immersive visitor experience in the Team Lab museums. So again, you can see with the visual here that, very sort of high sensory, stimulating all the 5 senses. And at Euromonitor, we've been tracking the experience more trend for many years. And visitors really are always on the lookout for something that is unique and that they can really engage with and, relate to. And that experience is so much more valuable to them than, say, goods and products. So everybody's still, creating and after these very multi-sensory immersive experiences. And you can see that by the sheer visitor numbers. So 2.3 million visitors interacting with this constantly shifting light and the shapes that are moving around the museum. So a museum without a map as well, gosh, that's very unique and special. So just turning quickly to look at some examples of global innovation. Of course, we mentioned the urban mobility piece, And of course, innovation is so fundamental in achieving that. So, for example, in Europe, we have the Volocopter. This is a German company, but they're also operating in Singapore and Dubai and the UAE, where they have electric sort of vertical and takeoff the eVTOLs. So, you know, already we're seeing the shift to electric flight. We're seeing greater interest in sustainable aviation fuel, which doesn't even account for, you know, 0.1% of the aviation market. So there is such a transition that's required. And of course, it's very much on the agenda for airlines to, you know, reach net zero by 2050 through the CORSIA agreement. Again, innovation in terms of diversity, inclusion. This is Sister Wave. They launched an online platform, which is for, you know, female travelers and transgender. It's a kind of, you know, off the back of the Me Too movement. It's a subscription model, and, you know, it's bringing together 19,000 sisters across, you know, thousands of cities in Brazil. Equally, they're looking to expand in Europe. So again, technology driving diversity and inclusion, which is great to see. Of course, you know, technology as well to save the planet. Gabon is the first country to be paid to, you know, preserve its forest. And of course, there's huge opportunity in Asia for, you know, creating these carbon sinks, leveraging, you know, forestry and biodiversity to, again, you know, drive down emissions. So that's a very important piece of the puzzle. And now I'm just going to turn to, you know, the next generation technology, if we sort of take a step out and look very much into the future. So, you know, talking about, you know, what's important for the next sort of 5 or so years, the #1 priority for travel businesses was to support their employees. And this is so great because, yes, we know that it's about the environmental impact that travel businesses have, but equally it's about looking after your staff. And of course, that's so important post-pandemic. But then, of course, we have the importance of, you know, recycling, you know, driving cost efficiencies with waste. And really important is this true focus, laser sharp focus on creating innovative goods and services and products and experiences for, you know, travelers and consumers. So 63% are keeping an eye on creating new products and services, which is, you know, fundamental to, I know that things are challenging with the business environment, but we still have to be investing and you know, co-creating to build products that resonate with consumers. One way that we've seen technology really help, and it's very forward-looking, is the whole sort of digital health pass. So one good example of that is the Untitled Travel Pass, you know, allowing consumers to share their COVID status and results, you know, whether they've had their boosters, what the results of their tests are, with transport providers. And of course, that has been fundamental to Europe and also North America opening up in a faster way than other regions such as Asia Pacific. So, you know, storing information, using AI, using biometrics, and creating a very safe space for transferring highly confidential health data. And this is something that consumers, you know, it's the trade-off. They're very happy, you know, 84% of passengers want an app to manage their health credentials, according to IATA. Equally, you know, as we mentioned in the intro, technology to help with visitor dispersal and with the scourge of over-tourism. Venice in Europe has created a smart control room, using sensors, using artificial intelligence, machine learning, the Internet of Things, and these sensors around the city to monitor, measure, and to also alleviate bottlenecks, advising travelers and visitors to the city, how they can avoid, the bottlenecks in the city, even with sensors on the gondolas, which is fantastic. And of course, this creating this sort of overarching supervisory control room, it creates sort of a very strong platform. It's very interoperable. And of course, there's that potential for scaling it to the rest of Italy as well, and if not beyond its borders. This is a really great example from the Caribbean, and they're offering their guests guilt-free holidays. So it's Bucuti and Tara in Aruba. So they are like a luxury resort. They have truly, embraced sustainability, and they're the first hotel to offer a carbon offset concierge for their guests. So that not just, it's not just the hotel's operations, but equally you're presenting that as a USP and a value add to the guests so that they can also offset for every part of their trip, from the moment they left their homes. And of course, they are working with so many accredited bodies, whether it's, Travel Life, Green Globe. And so, creating a very strong proposition steeped in sustainability and being carbon neutral. And then, of course, there is that aspect of looking across the whole of the life cycle of a building. So here in the UK, we've got Room 2, and they have a net zero life cycle. They look at the impact of the building from the moment they start designing to the end of life of the building, and assesses the CO2 emissions at every single stage. And ultimately, this is having a truly transformational effect. So being 89% more efficient than a standard hotel. That is, that's really some achievement that they have done. And of course, when we glimpse really, really far into the future, we're just about getting to grips with 5G. But if we look at the potential of 6G technology, by 2030, there could be 500 billion connected machines who are talking to each other, vehicles talking to other vehicles, talking to drones, talking to appliances, robots, smart sensors, the whole infrastructure is going to be connected. And of course, consumers will be engaging with that as well. So this hyper-connected world is going to usher in a new era of truly immersive experiences, extended reality, holograms, digital twins. And of course, that means that we're going to have digital businesses that are, native AI, native artificial intelligence, travel businesses, that'll be one step ahead of the curve of all the existing businesses as they are today. So it's going to be very interesting to see how travel startups in the 6G era are going to develop and emerge. So just to summarize, with innovation and next generation technology, there's some clear pillars. So we have the digital element that's driving, business transformation on the operational side, and then again on the front end, on the consumer side. We have the importance of innovation for sustainability to drive that carbon neutral, and then beyond that to net zero carbon emissions. So, whether it's in terms of climate action, in terms of creativity, or in terms of transparency for consumers. In the post-pandemic world, technology and innovation is being used to drive safe and seamless and contactless customer experiences. And of course, what we've also seen from today is that there's some really great examples of innovation being used for diversity, inclusion, and equality. So that's a really strong social element that technology can be used to achieve. So just like to say thank you so much for having me here today, and happy to take some questions from Santosh and everybody on the call.
Thank you so much, Caroline. I should say, thank you for that trip around the world and for telling us about all of these cool new innovations. I'm truly excited to see what the near future has in store for us all in the travel industry. I want to kick us off with a quick question. While the audience is preparing their questions, I'd like to remind everybody, please use the Q&A function to drop in your questions and we will get to them. Caroline, I wanted to kick us off with a quick question from my side. Innovation requires capital and it requires talent. Unfortunately, the travel industry has been hit in both areas pretty badly, one could say, during the pandemic. In your view, what does your research tell you about what we can expect, both in terms of venture funding, as well as, I guess one could say the return of talent back to the industry in the post-pandemic world?
I think you've hit the nail on the head that we have these two very important challenges. So what we're seeing, I'm sitting here in the UK in Scotland, and just to use this as an example, because I can also relate it to what's happening in Asia. So travel and tourism is so fundamental to the Scottish economy that the government has, doubled down on the support that it's given to travel businesses during the pandemic, but then equally not lost sight of the importance of innovation and creating, new startups and investing in the travel tech sector, to the point that they have actually created during the pandemic a travel tech body that works in partnership with the government, works in partnership with industry. So you've got that private-public collaboration. And so that's what I'm seeing from the UK side, so that they've not lost sight of it, and it's actually part and parcel of the recovery process. Equally, they're doubling down on their sustainability. So we had COP26 in November, and the launch of the Glasgow Declaration, which Visit Scotland is one of the founding partners, along with UNEP and the Travel Foundation. So again, you can see that sustainability, technology, and that's all part of the same circle. Now, when I look at Asia, I see some very, very strong investment bodies and companies, venture capitalists, such as, we've got SoftBank, we've got Temasek in Singapore. And, what Temasek has done is that they have, again, used the pandemic as an opportunity to be creative, not just to find new startups and invest in them, but also to encourage and, to create their own startups. So you can see this new hybrid model of, venture capitalism. And so that's really important that, again, we have that support from government and they don't roll back, because we need, as we see that, consumers, there's this pent up demand to travel, but we need to be able to transition to this carbon neutral and net zero world that's so important for our communities and our environment, that, they need to have this combined approach of technology and sustainability.
Okay, no, thank you for that. I do see that there is another question that's come in through our Q&A. There's a question from Professor Dimitrios. Caroline, do you have any good example of metaverse that's in use, or any best cases?
Well, I would say the example there that we had in the presentation with Japan and the ADM, that's one of our sort of first examples there that we have of the metaverse. And also the Sentosa crossing of the Singapore Tourism Board, so that, integrating into the virtual world. And, I have sort of kids school age, And, both of them just sit on their laptops, one on Roblox and one on Minecraft, and they are very much immersed in this virtual metaverse. And when I ask them about the metaverse, to them, it's just natural. They don't see metaverse as being different from reality. That is their reality. So I think it's interesting for us as the older generation to look at kids and say, oh, they're in the metaverse, whereas to them, it's just innate. That's just the way it is. Okay.
It definitely seems like there could be two parallel universes that sort of come together in the future, right? We'll have to wait and watch what happens. Okay, let me just check if there are any other questions coming through here from the audience. Doesn't look like it at the moment, but maybe, I'll maybe ask you another question, right, Caroline? In your view, sort of looking through the different continents of the different regions, which are the ones, and also, I guess, would you say that your travel research tells you that innovation is sort of in line with how travel is starting to bounce back in those regions, or is it not correlated with that? What does your research tell you there? Because, and particularly when you look at Asia Pacific, I guess obviously Asia Pacific has lagged Europe and North America in terms of the recovery. We do hope that we are able to bounce back fairly quickly now. But having said that, would you say innovation mirrors that trend, or is it something else?
I would say it's fairly well aligned. I think if I think about the different regions, so we always see Asia Pacific as being very sort of, forward in terms of digitalization and digital transformation. We see that in the level of, online penetration of travel, the level of mobile travel penetration. So, Asia tends to lead the curve in terms of, online. And so that's where essentially we would see the innovation taking place. But what Asia does very well is also, creating sustainability sort of led innovation. So again, those examples that we saw in Japan were very digital led, but then also I know that there's some really nice sort of, as I say, sustainability examples too. And then Europe, I would say that there's this real sense of, the importance of smart city innovation, the urban mobility piece, the sort of need for electric vehicles, the need to reduce emissions, and, that's steeped in actual law. So the whole, government piece, it's not just an idea, it's actually enshrined in law. So that's maybe where you do see, we have a sustainable travel index at Euromonitor, and the top 20 ranking, positions are all held by European countries led by Sweden. And in a way, it's not surprising because they have totally embraced that agenda. And, it's in law. It's the way that the whole of, the EU is transitioning to a green and circular economy. We have the Paris agenda, we have the 2050 agenda. So everything is aligned, and that's where the innovation is being supported by, whether it's the European Center of Innovation, whether, there's a whole load of bodies that then support that endeavor. So, but it's more difficult when you don't have that coordinated approach. But I would say I always look to Asia for digital transformation. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing.
Well, let's hope. We are always looking at things from a positive lens, so let's hope it's all going to be good. I do see that there are a couple of questions that have come in, Caroline. The first one is from Liz Ortiguera, PATA CEO. She's asking, do you have a view on physical versus virtual versus hybrid meetings and conferences?
I think it's a very interesting area to be working in. For example, we work with lots of different partners, and I was hearing from Greenview yesterday that, they're obviously sustainability, hotel sort of data provider and build the Cornell Hotel Benchmark Index tool that's on the Cornell website. So basically, Olivia at Greenview was saying that they're working on a net zero strategy for the meetings and incentives, the MICE area, and that it's very well coordinated, the whole of the industry. And I just thought, yes, I feel that the MICE sector, it's very professional, it's very well organized, and equally, if they have this net zero focus, there's no reason why they won't be successful in embracing the new normal. And there is an element, I think, as well in travel. We all love conferences and getting together. It's a very sociable industry. There's the very strong reasons for people to get together. And what it is, it's about, transforming and not going back to the old traditional model, but having, high quality team building events that are very targeted. And that could be offsite, it could be, or it could even be that, we have this sort of more hybrid working where people are the digital nomads and going to Thailand for a month when they're there meeting up with Asia colleagues. So I feel that there, I don't particularly like this term bleisure, but I do feel that the business leisure combination, and it's about targeting the consumer and matching what their expectations are at the right time. And one minute you are a business traveler and the next minute you're a leisure traveler. So it's about travel brands providing and giving what that consumer needs at the right time, in the right place.
Okay. So you're saying flexibility is sort of the key aspect there, right? Okay.
Yes, I think, not going back to the old business model.
Yeah.
Transforming, having that eye on net zero. And there's no reason why the MICE sector can't sort of, emerge from the ashes.
Yes. Okay. We'll take one last question, Caroline. It's an anonymous question. What are the biggest challenges travel tech startups face during the recovery post-pandemic? How should public-private partnerships be shaped to support them?
Well, I think the biggest challenge that we all face is uncertainty. As I mentioned, we have the war in Ukraine. That's, going to weigh down on recovery, particularly in Europe. And of course, Russian outbound travelers are so important to many destinations, including, the Maldives, Thailand, they are so significant. So it is about tackling and being aware of the threats, but also diversifying and looking for new source markets. At the moment, we can see, unfortunately, there is a two-tiered recovery. There's the haves and the have-nots. For example, here in the UK, we've completely rolled back on all the restrictions. There are no restrictions anymore. If I were a destination in Asia, I'd be looking at setting up key corridors to countries that are a little bit more liberal with their, their travel bans and restrictions. And so also looking for those high levels of vaccination rates, but equally we have to promote vaccine equity. And I know that's a very strong, focus area for PATA with the work that you're doing with UNICEF. So I would also be working with the tour operators that, if you have people, say, a corridor between UK and Thailand, that those UK visitors are also paying forward a vaccine so that people in destination also benefit. So that requires a bit of coordination. That's where people like PATA can be involved. But equally, it's that private-public partnership, working the governments in destination and origin working together, the tour operators working together, and equally with the NGOs and the charities to make sure that we have vaccine equity. Yeah,
that's a great idea, actually. I think if there's an opportunity to have travelers opt in by default when they do that, I think that would really benefit countries or regions where there's still vaccine inequity.
So I think, so specifically travel tech, companies are the same as all other tour operators and travel companies.
Yes.
I think everybody is facing the same challenges, but obviously with travel tech, they need to keep an eye on the sort of the venture, capital that they require to keep going. And so equally, they need to have these tap into, sort of sites of innovation, those funds of innovation that are so vital. And that's why I was, mentioned the Scotland example, just because they've not lost sight of that. Mm-hmm. Despite the challenges, they've continued to invest. They are creating more, travel tech specific activities and plugging that into the wider, tourism ecosystem.
Yeah. Great. No, thank you so much, Caroline. Now, we all know you're really busy, so we appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to do this for us. With that, I will let you go. I do have a couple of things that I would like to share with the rest of the audience in terms of upcoming PATA events. Caroline, thank you so much once again.
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
Bye.
We do know that in crisis lies opportunity. And so therefore, I think there's an opportunity to make travel not just safer, but better in every way. So we do look forward to all of the innovations that Caroline has briefed us about. So with that, let me quickly brief you on a couple of our upcoming events. Firstly, we have the PATA Destination Marketing Forum 2022 going to be held between August 2nd to 4th in Songkhla province in Thailand. The theme for this year's event is Forging Ahead. While our industry has been paused for 2 years, at this year's PATA Destination Marketing Forum, we have reason to be optimistic that global tourism is ready for a robust recovery. Travelers are keen to explore, destinations are ready to open. Our conference program focuses on key issues facing destination marketing in the post-pandemic recovery world. Registrations for this event are now open, and we would love to see you there in person. Also in October, we have the PATA Annual Summit that is going to be held between October 25th to 27th in Ras Al Khaimah in the UAE. And that is also going to be an in-person conference. We would love to see you there. With that, I would like to wrap up today's webinar. If you would like any further information, please feel free to reach out to the PATA member team at pata.org. Once again, I'd like to thank you for dialing in, and we look forward to seeing you at one of our upcoming webinars or events in the near future. Thank you.